Thank you for tuning in to Trinity's channel. Welcome back if you're a subscriber. If not, welcome for the first time. My name is Trinity, obviously. So this video is in honor of it being Valentine's Day today. It used to be my least favorite holiday, but now I actually am kind of starting to let go of that trauma. So good for me. And it's just kind of I'm happy. I'm happy to see other people in love. I'm happy to see people in healthy relationships. The people who are in toxic relationships, I just shake my head because it's so obvious. People are just getting with people just to celebrate the day because they don't want to be alone. And that is so lame to me. I think in this generation, people make being single an insult and a bad thing, and they look at people as less than if you're not in a relationship. Being in a relationship is the prize, which being in a relationship is lovely, but it's not the end all be all. There's nothing wrong with taking extra time to get to know yourself and love on yourself before you get into a relationship, because let's be honest, when you get into a relationship, you have to give half of you. And if you don't even have half to give, then they're gonna have more of you than you have for yourself. And that's when you end up losing yourself in a relationship when you do that. It's just inevitable. It happens to everybody. You lose a little bit of yourself when you get into a relationship because you have to accommodate for the other person. You're giving half of yourself to the other person. It makes sense. But if you have a little bit more in your cup to give, to pour into the other person, you're fine. If you're pouring for an empty cup, that's when you're screwed. So that's basically why you have to make sure that your cup is full first. You have to make sure that you yourself as an individual are okay without a person. You don't need a person, but you are able to bring more or half to the table as well, and vice versa. So that was a long rant, but if you haven't guessed it already by the title of the video, we're going to be talking about relationships. We're going to go into my timeline, my relationship timeline, go into my mistakes, lessons learned. It's not going to be tea. I know people are like, oh, the tea. It's not tea yet. It's just, my truth and going into those things. And of course I'm going to be respectful and I'm not going to go into names and all of that. I'm just sharing my story because hopefully it could be helpful to people. I mean, I'm not in a relationship. I'm not an expert on relationships by any means, but I feel like by us sharing our stories and our testimonies, it can help other younger women who are going through the same thing currently or who have gone through it and they can relate. Again, just building community. So yeah, and I think also I'm looking at it from a different perspective. If you are a Christian, then obviously we are not looking through the lens of society and culture. We're looking through the lens of kingdom, and that also warps a lot of what I'm gonna say and makes it seem a little different, because I'm not looking at it from maybe how other people would traditionally look at it. So yeah, I also know the scripture. I will put it up here. That is one of my favorite scriptures, because I just feel like God basically gave us the rule book. He gave us the play. He told us exactly how love should look so that you're not confused. He told us exactly how we should feel when we're loved, how to give love. Love is the greatest commandment that we can do, is to love thy neighbor as ourselves or as our brother. So I feel like it's so important, that scripture, and it holds a lot of weight. The way I look at my past relationships, I look through the lens of that scripture, because it's so powerful. It's so simple, yet so powerful. So yeah, I guess we can go into my past and my life through love, I guess you would say. So I haven't really had the best track record, I would say, with picking men. That's why I'm single. Again, first catchphrase, if you knew your worth, you would be single. That is like, and I know a lot of people kind of say, huh? Because if you're in a relationship, you're telling me I should break up with my boyfriend? Yes. No, I'm not telling you that. I'm saying, like, there are a lot of people out there who are in relationships that don't need to be in relationships, and people just are in relationships for the sake of saying they're in a relationship. And so I'm saying, like, if you knew your worth, you would not be in the relationship you're in right now. Like, and that goes for most people, but not all. If you are, in a healthy relationship, I'm not talking to you, obviously. This is more so if the shoe fits, wear it. But yeah, what I said is true. Like, if you knew your worth, you would be single. You would take the time to get to know yourself and learn yourself and love on yourself first before you get into a relationship. You would heal before getting into a relationship. People who jump from relationships to relationships, I'm sorry, unpopular opinion, you have not healed. Then after they get into a long relationship back to back, they get into their 50s and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know myself. And I don't want to be that. Like, I don't want to become 50 and then divorce my partner of 20 years and then be like, wow, I thought I knew myself and I don't. Like, I'm sorry, but that's what it gives. Like, people who get into a relationship quick, they may stay with that person forever. But eventually, it's going to hit some hard times and they're going to grow up and be like, wow, I was with this person when I was 20 years old. I'm no longer 20 years old. I'm 50 years old and I don't think like a 20-year-old anymore. Like, I've grown up and I have grown apart from this person. So that's just that's how I think. That's reality. So I'd rather, like, learn myself first, so when I get with my partner, I know for the most part who I am. And what I want. Now, obviously, you never stop growing, you never stop changing, but by the time I get 50, there's going to be some new things I learn about myself, but the core values of who I am is going to be the same, and vice versa for my partner. So yeah, anyway, that was a little bit of a sidebar. Let's get back into me and my relationships. We'll start from the beginning. I think ever since I was young, I've always been a hopeless romantic. Like, I read all the romance books. I read Twilight. I read Hunger Games, Divergent, all of that stuff. I watched all of those movies. Nicholas Sparks was my favorite author. And so, as you can imagine, as a kid, I had this dream or these ideals of what I thought being in a relationship would be. Everybody talked about how great it was, and I just always wanted that for myself. I fantasized about it a lot when I was younger, probably a little too young to be reading those things, but I read them and I fantasized about that for myself. So, funny story, when I was in 3rd grade, a little bit why I don't like this day is because there's been a lot of traumatic things that happen on Valentine's Day for me. So we're growing, we're moving through our trauma. In 3rd grade, I liked this boy, and his name was, actually, I'm not going to say his name, but I liked this boy. And, back then, that's when we hand out the little, I like you, do you like me cards, right? So, at this point, I had asked him, do you like me, yes or no? Do you want to be my Valentine, yes or no? That's what it was. And I had given it to him, and his friend had, like, interceded it. And he was like, what? Trinity asked you wanted your Valentine? And he, like, made the biggest fun and broadcasted it to the whole class. And the boy was, I guess, embarrassed. And so he was like, do you want to be your Valentine? Like, broadcasting it. And the boy said no. So I ran in the bathroom. Back then, the classrooms in the elementary school were in the classrooms, like, attached to the classroom. They weren't outside of the classroom. So I ran into that classroom and cried and locked myself in there. And I remember the teacher, like, knocking on the door, and it was so traumatizing because obviously I have to leave the classroom. I have to leave the bathroom, and I'm back in the classroom where everybody was, and they all saw me, and everybody remembered that. Like, even when that's why I was so glad I moved later in life, because I went to school in Texas, and, like, that remained a story that everybody remembered for years of my life. He would always bring that up, like, remember? And I'd be like, like, but yeah, that was embarrassing. So that was a traumatic story that I remember from then. And then years later in high school, another traumatic story. Like, I went out with somebody who then became my first boyfriend, but this was way before then, when we first started talking. And we had went on our first date the day before Valentine's Day, I want to say, or like a week before Valentine's Day. It was something very close to Valentine's Day. So naturally, like, I had been this guy's friend for a while. Like, we had hung out a couple of times, but this was our first official date. So when Valentine's Day came up, I was like, oh, this is great. All my friends were hyping me up. I was telling them about the date. And Valentine's Day came around and I was like, I'm going to finally have a date for Valentine's Day. Like, this is amazing. And it's with somebody that I've wanted for so long now. Like, this is great. So Valentine's Day comes and it's crickets. Like, it's crickets for me, y'all. Nothing. Radio silence. Like, I was like waiting the whole day, like, like nothing. And I remember, like, my parents were they felt so bad for me because I was just like waiting the whole day. I didn't get a text. I didn't get a card. And this is the thing, we were not official. So I wasn't expecting the roll out the red carpet. Like, I wasn't expecting much because I knew we were not official. But I was still like, you could have at least sent it a text or like asked me if I wanted to go out today if we had just went on a first date, and the date went so well. So I was just so confused as to why Valentine's Day came around and it was radio silence. And then, of course, in my pride, I'm not going to reach out to you if you haven't reached out to me. I've always been that way. Like, I don't want to reach out to you and look dumb when it's Valentine's Day. Why are you not reaching out to me? So I didn't say anything the entire day. And then I waited until like maybe 7 o'clock and was like, I finally said something. I was like, so you just weren't going to say anything to me on Valentine's Day? Like, I don't understand. Like, I thought we had a great date. What's going on? And I don't remember what excuse he gave, but I think it was just like, yeah, this isn't gonna work, blah blah blah, blase blase, some runaround. And I remember I cried and cried and cried and cried and cried, and that was just the start of a vicious cycle with that relationship, because that was not the first time that's happened. That was not the first time my parents have seen me cry about him, because that's how it was. Like, I guess now we can segue from that Valentine's Day story. Oh, also, I know I'm all over the place, but let me put this down. You can't really see. There's a glare, but focus on what I'm saying. Fun fact, I learned, like, I guess maybe a year later, because we always remained friends and like had a good conversation and communication, but I learned a year later, and he like brought it up to me in such a like haha way. I guess it was just like his conscience, he had to get it out, because he like said a year later, like, oh, by the way, remember that time like I didn't answer you on Valentine's Day? And I was like, yeah. He was like, I was talking to my ex, I hung out with her that entire day. I said, and you know why he brought that up is because there was a particular shirt he bought at the mall with her, and he had worn it, and then I think I complimented the shirt, or I said, that's a new shirt, and he said the story like, ha ha ha, guess where the shirt's from, blase blase. And I just remember being so like annoyed, because I was like, do you know how traumatic that was for me? Like, you knew Valentine's Day was like the worst day for me, and you just added to the trauma, because everybody knows that third grade story. If you ask any of my friends, they know the story. So the fact that he added to the trauma, I said, wow, that was just horrible. So again, that's why I don't like Valentine's Day. But I'm starting to heal from that, because it's just a day. It's fine. But moving into that first relationship, that was just some context into like my childhood and everything going into Valentine's Day and like love then. So that segues into that same person. Well, I guess I'll just say this before I get into that. When I was in Texas, and comment down if you can relate, I grew up in a predominantly white area. Therefore, there was not a lot of girls who looked like me in school. And it shaped a lot of my taste in guys. It shaped how I viewed myself. I had very low self-esteem. And I didn't really have confidence in how I looked because I just felt like I looked so different from everybody. And I always would like attribute not having a boyfriend. I'm saying this to say like I didn't have any really relationships in Texas in high school before I moved to Virginia. Like before I moved up until high school, I did not talk to anybody. There were so many people who talked to people in elementary school. They had boyfriends in elementary school. They were kissing people in elementary school. They had boyfriends in middle school. They had people, and I just kept looking like, I think I had like a boyfriend a little bit for like 3 days in elementary school. Shout out to him if he remembers. I want to say names so bad, but I'm not. But I want to because I just, anyway, I had a boyfriend for like 3 days. I don't know if he remembers that. I brought it up like later because he was like one of the popular boys in school. And I had just moved, and so it was like 3 days, but then I was like, it's too serious, I have to break up with you. That was like in 3rd grade. That was the closest I ever got to having a boyfriend before high school. But everybody else I knew, all the popular girls, everybody, they had boyfriends in elementary school and middle school. And I never had anybody. And I'm telling y'all, that used to affect me so bad because I was like, what? That's all I wanted. Like, I was like, why doesn't anybody like me? Why doesn't anybody find me attractive? That used to mess with my self-esteem. I would even attribute it to being black. I would be like, if I wasn't black, if I looked like Miley Cyrus, my idol, like back before I knew not to have idols, like that was the girl I looked up to, like Miley Cyrus. I loved her. And I was like, why can't I look like her? If I looked like her, if I looked white, if I had lighter skin and all these features, if I looked like them, I would be in a relationship right now. That's how I used to look. And it's sad now, like saying that out loud, because it's hard to realize that was my reality at a point. Now I love who I am. I could not imagine being anybody else, but back then it was harder, and it wasn't as cool to be black like it is now. Like, we weren't really mainstream. It was in the 90s we had kind of like the platform, but then once it hit like the 2000s and pop music and alternative music, and it just kind of flipped, and we kind of were at the back burner again. I didn't have a lot of representation is what I'm saying. I didn't have a lot of representation. And then growing up in a predominantly white school, I really did not have representation. So I didn't have people who looked like me. So I felt out of place, and I felt like that was what I attributed to why I wasn't in a relationship, even though I didn't need to be in a relationship that young. But when everybody else is, you're like, why can't I? So that's kind of more background. Going into high school, right? Again, did not talk to anybody. Sophomore year was when I started like dressing more to fit my body. I started like wearing contacts, and I started wearing makeup, and I think I was getting more confidence. And then I ended up moving to Virginia. When I moved to Virginia, at first I was so excited because I just felt like in Texas, I never felt like I fit in. I never felt like I had a group of friends that was like my clique. And I never felt like, I belonged there. I just always felt like I stood out, and I wasn't happy. I did have a few friends here or there that I, talked to, but it wasn't like, I don't know, I wasn't at home there. So when I moved to Virginia, I saw it as a fresh start, and I was like, I can create my own. Nobody knows any trauma stories. I can create my own fresh start. I can meet new people, and I had more hope this time around. So that being said, when I moved to Virginia, I talked to a few different people, but nothing really went anywhere. The first boy that I talked to and started to have feelings for was the boy that I ended up in my first ever relationship with later on in life. And we're gonna call him, I don't want to be too obvious, let's say Drummer Boy. So Drummer Boy was a friend. Like, I think why I was so drawn to him is because I met him in chemistry. It was him, another guy, and then a girl. And then another girl. But that was like the group of friends that I had. They were a year older than me, but because of the Texas, Virginia thing, I ended up being in chemistry earlier, even though that was junior year. I ended up being in sophomore year. So that's confusing. Neither here nor there. But that was like the little group of people, and Drummer Boy was in that circle. And so that was my favorite class. We had like A and B schedule every week, and so I would always look forward to B days. I would wear my better outfits on those days because I knew I was going to see them, and those were my friends, and he was in the group. And I really didn't realize I was really attracted to him. I didn't feel that way. I just was more so like I fit in. And again, there was a lot more black people at this school. I felt a lot more like I belonged, and these people were my friends. So I remember like when I first got to that class and I said I was new, he like spoke to me like, you know, and people were like, oh, this new girl is new, and she's probably pretty, and let's like mess with her. Like, he always used to just mess with me. As you know, young boys, they just mess with you, they pick on you, they blah blah blah. And at this point I think like I've always been pretty, but I just didn't know I was pretty. So like you know, they probably saw a pretty new girl, and like I was very like and that was new, and like I was very innocent and green, and like I didn't know a lot of things because I was sheltered, and you could just smell it on me. Like, you could tell I was sheltered and didn't know much about life, and was just like a little fresh daisy that they love to pick on. And so that's what he would do. Drummer Boy, the other boy, like, they would be nice to me, they would be my friends, but they would also pick on me and tease me because of just like my personality, and they thought it was funny to watch me like ah. But anyway, so as we continued to talk and be friends as a group, I started gravitating more towards him, and I started thinking he was attractive because, you know, he was showing interest in me. And at that point, anybody who showed interest in me, it was like I was ready to receive it. So I don't know when exactly we got, I can't go into too much in high school because it used to be so vivid. I could tell the story from start to finish. But now it's like so much life has passed. That was years ago. I do not remember. All I know is somehow we got our number. I think somehow the other friends realized like we kind of had like a connection and a chemistry. But yeah, I don't know. We would text and talk a lot. We would talk all the time. Like, we would text all the time about life. We would talk. And then in class when we would see each other, it was kind of like cat and mouse. Like, we would text on the phone, and then when he would see me in person, like, he would be like, you know, whatever. He would just, it was like playful banter. And it was interesting to me because I never had that before. I never had somebody interested in me and doing all the playful banter stuff. And he was a little bit older, so it was like, He was only a year older, but still. Technically 2 years because I skipped a grade. But yeah, flash forward to my junior year, his senior year, out, like, so he had a car. I didn't, obviously. I didn't even have my license at all. So he would drive himself to school sometimes, and sometimes he would pick me up, or he would drop me off at home because we lived kind of close to each other. And like, we would go to Sonic and get slushies, like very, very innocent. It was just sometimes he would drop me off at home, sometimes he would pick me up, like very, very innocent. And we would talk some more then. And I just remember like listening to music and talking to him, and that was so like fun because I never had that before. And I just felt like, you know, it was fun, it was new, and it was exciting for me because I never had that experience. Just talking, getting to know him, we got to know each other more. And then when he turned to his senior year and I was a junior, that's when we really started talking more heavily. And we started hanging out more heavily and seeing each other, talking to each other. And that's when we became more of like an item. Like, he would do things that made it seem like we were together, but like I never had a title, I never had a claim. Like I knew other girls who they would have boyfriends and like that was my boyfriend. I could never say this is my boyfriend about him. Like it was always like, oh yeah, we go together real bad, but we didn't go together like in real life. Like nobody knew. Like it was like a secret. Like it was like our little secret. And looking back, I really feel bad for myself that I allowed that to be, because I was, you know, I deserved more. I deserved to be like shown off and like hold hands in the hallway and like people knew we were together. But it was like, but like I said, we were a little secret. And that again added to my low self-esteem, because it just feels like why don't I deserve to be claimed? I knew a girl in high school as well who, it was the same thing. She was dating somebody who was or talking to somebody who, both no, she was dating him who was a year older than her, and like they were boyfriend and girlfriend, and they said they were boyfriend and girlfriend, and it was like, you know, we knew. But when I was in high school and I was talking to him, people knew kind of like, oh, they go together. But it was a secret. It was like people were like cheeky, but nobody, it wasn't a claim thing. And so like after the first date and everything, and after he, I'm going backwards, I'm jumping in time because I don't remember the timelines of things, but like we went on the first date and that blew up, but then somehow we ended up talking again. It would be an on and off again thing. Like he would do something that irritated me, I would cry, I would, you know, blah blah blah, cuss him out, even though I wasn't cussing, but you know what I mean. I would air him out, and then I would block him, or we would stop talking for months, then we would start texting again. Like it was just constant cycle. And amongst those times, there was a time when, you know, like I said, he wasn't claiming me. We would hang out, we would, you know, yeah, well, you know, do what people do, and yet there was no title. So I'm getting more intimate with him. That our first date was my first kiss, and so that was a big deal. Like I was just like very attached to this person, because all of my firsts were happening with him at this time. At this point, you know, we're exploring a lot of different things together for the first time, so I'm also becoming more, becoming closer to him in that way as well. And yeah, but again, no title, no claim, and nothing tangible is what I'm trying to explain to y'all. There was nothing tangible for me to be able to say I was with this man. I had not met his parents. There was nothing serious. It was just, I was getting more serious. My feelings were more serious, but there was nothing to hold on to except for the fact that, you know, we were each other's little secret. Know your worth, ladies. Know your worth. I'm saying this now as I'm older, because I was like, what, 16 here? Like 16, 17? And I accepted it because it was all I could get. Like I was desperate, and it was the first person giving me attention, and the first person I had done anything with. So it was like, you know, it is what it is. But amongst those times of us doing those things, little things stand out to me of like things that he would do or say. The Valentine's Day thing was awful. There was also a time where like I wanted to go to prom with him. It was his senior prom. Junior prom, I forgot what happened. Anyway, his senior prom, like we were again talking, and I was like, again, like now that I think about it, this is so sad, because as a young girl, like I just remember pining after this person, like just begging to have him reciprocate even the most common things. Like I just wanted what every young girl wants in high school. Like I liked this boy, and I wanted him to ask me to go to prom. I'm like, this is your senior prom, and you know, it's the last time you're going to prom. Why don't we go together? Because we go together. Like we basically go together. Like we're just not together. But why wouldn't we go to prom together? And it was excuses. I'm not going to prom. I don't want to go to prom. I don't do dance. I don't do this. And I'm like, okay, I was like, okay, it's not really about you. Like I just wanted to go. But no, he made this big deal about he didn't want to go. then all his friends ended up going, and he felt left out, like he didn't go at all, and he regretted it. But before then, that's what I was trying to remember which prom it was. He ended up talking to this other girl, and I remember he ended up taking her to prom, or he was going to take her to prom because something happened, and ended up backing out last minute, not taking her. But just the fact that he was going to take her to prom and not me, really, again, self-esteem. Like, a lot of these things, like, trigger, like, they imagine me, and these things are chipping away at an imaginary, like, sculpture that is self-esteem. Like, every single year of my life, it just chipped away. Every traumatic event, it chipped away from that until there was basically rubble left. Because it was like, here I am begging you to take me to prom, basically damn near begging you, and you said yes to this girl taking you to prom, because we're not gonna go into why, but you know, good brain. And that to me is just like, you know, that was such a slap in the face to me, because I was like, here I am, I've known you for 2 years, like, we've been cool for 2 years, and you won't even take me to prom. It was a lot. We're not even gonna go into it. That's just like the instances I can remember by thinking back into my brain on, you know, some of the things that he did at the time that really, like, hurt me. And I continued to go back because he was all I knew. Until, I think that's pretty much all the big ones. Oh, and then I remember another big one was his graduation. His senior graduation was a big deal. I literally got their yearbook because he was in the yearbook. It wasn't even my yearbook. I got it because he was in the yearbook, and because my friends who were the grade above me, the people in chemistry, I got it because I had a lot of friends who were a grade above me, because I was in a lot of their classes. And I remember I went to his graduation literally to see him graduate, but also to see my other friends, but mainly for him. And again, I went with another one of my friends, the girl who was dating the guy who was a year above her, and she went, and she was able, I remember this gutted me. It's so sad thinking about it now, because I'm like, I'm transported back to that little girl. It kind of makes me emotional, because I'm like transporting back into the mind of that young girl who just wanted to be so desperately loved and to love. And like, I remember seeing, like, my friend, if I wasn't taking the pictures for her and her boyfriend at that time, I remember seeing her stand next to her boyfriend proudly with his parents, and they were all taking pictures of both her and him while he graduated. And here I was, this man's secret, drummer boy's secret, that I couldn't even go to his parents and be like, oh yeah, I've been talking to your son, and your son is graduating. I couldn't love him out loud. I don't even think I hugged him. I think I went up to him, and I was kind of just like, because I didn't know how to show affection, because I was like, nobody really knows about us, so I don't know if I can, because I wasn't claimed. And I think I remember texting him after the fact, and he was like, you could have hugged me, you could have kissed me. And he said it so nonchalant, and I was like, how, when we're not even really, like, I don't know. And now that I think about it, all of the mind games and, like, the confusion, God is not the author of confusion, y'all. Like, I'm sorry, but the back and forth and the what are we and the this and that, here is a life lesson from my past that I will take into my future. If a man really cares about you, and if a man really loves you, and I'm saying this to young women who may be in high school or going through the same thing, he will claim you from jump. He will love you out loud. He won't be afraid to love you out loud. Refer back to the scripture. He is going to love you. He's not going to treat you like a secret. He's not going to hide you. It's not going to be an issue or confusion of what are we, and it's not going to cause you anxiety. I had anxiety in high school because I couldn't love this man out loud. Like, I felt like I couldn't be honest about my feelings because everything with him was so nonchalant. This is another lesson I take into my life. Like, I realized as I got older, I cannot deal with a nonchalant man. I've dealt with nonchalant men my whole life, and I am somebody who is very in touch with my emotions. I have a very high emotional intelligence. I'm not a nonchalant person. I'm very passionate, and I need somebody who is passionate or articulate about their feelings, because if you don't tell me, I'm going to be sitting there second guessing, and words of affirmation is my love language. So I need you to tell me. Like, I need the reassurance. I don't need you to sit there and act like, well, you know what it is. I don't know what it is. Tell me. Remind me. Like, that's how I realize I need love moving forward in life. Like, I need you to tell me. Tell me. I want to hear it. Hello? Tell me. And I didn't realize that when I was younger. I dealt with it a lot. Oh, because I felt like, you know what he used to tell me? It was like, oh, I don't say it often so that when I do, you cherish it more. No. Red flag. Do not accept that. If they love you and they truly care, they will continue to do. If they know you need reassurance, they will continue to do it. And if they can't do it, then maybe that is just not somebody who's compatible with you, babe. Like, that's what you have to realize. Like, what will you settle for? Everybody's settling for something. What will you settle for? What is a deal breaker for you? And what will you allow? And that's something that moving forward, I will not allow. If you know that's something that you need, do not settle for less. Point blank, period. So, yeah, that's that. And then, again, those are all things that happened in high school. In college, I think my parents took it as an opportunity to be like, Trinity, when you get to college, you're going to meet so many people. You're going to have so many experiences. You're not even going to think about this guy, right? Oh, I'm so stupid. Guys, he ended up graduating, and I was in my senior year of high school and still continued to talk to him, is what I failed to mention. Like, so I guess this is like going on year 3. Like, year 2 or 3. I still continue to talk to him on and off. And I would just continue to be friends with him. Again, we were doing this on and off thing where we would be friends, we would mess around with each other, we'd be friends, we'd mess around with each other. Like, we would just be in this constant cycle. And like, I would get in my feelings and he would cut it off because he was like, you're in your feelings, you can't handle it, and and it was a lot. I think I had a little bit of abandonment issues, was because out of nowhere he would just like say, oh yeah, I can't do this anymore, randomly. And so I would always have to live with that, and I would cry and cry and cry, and I would be devastated, and then it would be a constant cycle. We'd be friends, and then we mess around, and cycle, trauma, toxic, you know the deal. So then when I went off to college, like I said, opportunity, space, opportunity. I met a lot of different people, but again, nothing really stuck. Like, I met a guy who was like a wrestler. That didn't really stick. I met a guy on my floor who liked me, but my friend liked him, and that was kind of drama. And he was white, and that was new for me, but I didn't really like take it seriously because I was still hung up on Drummer Boy. So I couldn't really open up my heart to another because I was still stuck on that, even though my parents were like, you're going to college, you have new experiences and all this and that. I even had like I don't even know if I want to get into that. I had a crush on my friend now, who he's literally just my friend. But I remember like when I first met him in college, I was like, oh, this is new and da-da-da. But that didn't really work out. We were just meant to be friends, and we continued to be friends. Shout out to him. But yeah, what I mean to say is a lot of different things did not work out. Like, it was just not working out. It wasn't sticking, and lo and behold, somehow we ended up messaging, and I invited him to go out on like this double date with me and my friend at the time. We'll call her Ace. So Ace had a girlfriend, and we like double dated with them at a like pool table. Like, we had like a little like lounge thing at my university. It was kind of cool, actually. And so we could play different games, and I remember showing him around the campus, showing him around the dining hall. I was telling all my friends in college, like, this is the guy that I was talking about all the time. Like, I remember the first time I had a drink, I was like, I called him, and everybody was like, you literally had half a shot, why are you calling him? Like, it's so funny. Like, they always joke with me about that. But anyway, they heard so many stories about him, so this was like the first time I was introducing them to him. And and we went on the double date and everything, but it wasn't really a date. But it just reignited an old flame. And he was gonna go home. He didn't end up going home. He ended up staying with me, and the rest is history. Like, after that, we just became an item. I think, like, he cemented that point. It solidified our relationship after that night. All the, like, feelings came rushing back, and yeah, we ended up becoming boyfriend and girlfriend. Like, I think he just asked me, like, so I think he just was like, okay, so you're like my girlfriend now, right? And like, that was what it was. Now looking back, it was cute at the time, but I would like a proper ask, you know, but it is what it is. I accepted it because I never had the title up until now, and in my head I was like, finally I'm getting everything I ever wanted. All I ever wanted was this man to claim me and to love me and, you know, give me the title of being his girlfriend. And I felt like I deserved. I felt like everything I'd been through with him up until that point was for that moment, for me to finally be his girlfriend. Like, it was everything I waited for. And all I had to do was sleep with him. I'm kidding. Do not, I'm literally joking. But I'm just saying, guys, that was a joke. This was my first official relationship. And I'm not going to go into anything in the relationship because I ended up being with him for a year after that. We literally broke up like a week after our year anniversary. I was very heartbroken. I'll go into the breakup, but this was the first person that I introduced to my parents. The thing, we had been dating for a significant amount of time before I told my parents, because I was like, I cannot tell my parents I'm dating this man after he has been like dragged me through the mud. They're gonna be like, no. They were like, I knew they were gonna say no, so I said I can't reintroduce him to my parents again until we're serious, until I know that this is a sure thing. So I waited a couple of months, and it was just bliss. He would come and visit me, and I remember even for like my birthday was in December, like I went on a cruise and he did like this really thoughtful thing for me. I met his parents at this point multiple times. Me and his parents, we tight, dog. Like, y'all don't remember me, but we tight. Like, I loved his parents like my own parents. Like, they were so cool, down to earth. I was over at his house all the time, eating tacos. I was hanging with his dog, Kenya. Rest in peace, Kenya. Like, his family was my family in my head. Like, I loved him. At this point, I was in love with him. I had been in love with him for years. I think I just never really fully grasped that. I loved everything about him, his flaws, his family, and I just accepted everything. And like I said, I forgot the past because I was like, I'm just gonna love who this person is now. It's great. We had great communication. Anytime there was something that happened that I didn't like, or he did that I didn't like, we would talk about it and we would get through it. Like, we had some rough patches, but we were always able to get through it and talk through it, and it was fine. But towards the end, I could tell he was being distant because, again, like I said, we had been together for years, friends. So I knew his patterns. I knew when he was withdrawn. And so I remember towards the end, like, he would be withdrawn. He then moved to another university that was farther away. And I remember, like, being like, if you don't want to be with me because you're going off to college, I know it's a lot of new experiences. Like, if you don't want it, like, we could break up now. And he wrote me this whole long letter about how he didn't want to break up with me, and like he wanted to make it work. And so he went off to college, and the distance really like broke us. It was like an hour distance away, and the distance, you know, broke us. He grew withdrawn. And I remember one day, also like at this point, like, my family had grown to love him again. He had been over at the house all the time. He knows my family knew him well. We were always over at the house together. Like, it was water under the bridge now. So one day I decided to go over to visit his place because he had his own place at the university. And I don't know, I could tell things were just different. but I kind of shook it off because I was like, it's fine, we'll get over it, it's fine. And I remember, like, I'd spent the whole day with him, and I got in my car and I was ready to drive off. It was an hour to get home, and I was sitting in my car, and I was kind of like, I don't know, I had an eerie feeling. Like, I was kind of just like, something's not right. But I was like sitting in my car, like, okay, I'm gonna leave now, like, you're gonna give me a hug, a kiss, like, okay. And I think he did, like, really quickly, and then ran off. And I just sat in my car because it didn't sit right with me. I was kind of like, and then he, like, came back to my car, and he said he didn't want to be with me anymore. And y'all, my heart broke. I was traumatized. I did not believe it. I think I saw stars. I know I'm being really dramatic, but, like, it broke my heart. It was my first, like, official heartbreak because I had been with this man for a year. Like, we just celebrated our anniversary. Like, everything about the relationship was great. This was my first love, my first everything, and it broke me. It broke me. I was not well for a while. And I think, you know, like, this was somebody who idiotically I envisioned my life with, and I thought everything was going so well, and it was cut abrupt. Like, I knew we had issues, but, like, I didn't think it was gonna be so bad that he would just completely cut it off so abruptly without warning. And I remember I called my mom crying. She was like, what the heck happened? Like, what happened? And I told her, like, he broke up with me, and she was like, what? Like, my whole family was like, everybody's eyes were like everybody was shocked. Even my friends were shocked. Like, when I was planning this man's, like, birthday party the next month, like, that same month. Like, everybody was shocked. His friends were shocked. I was friends with all his friends. Like, it was just really shocking for everybody. And it was like, I don't think people knew how they look at me as, like, a little dainty flower, like I said, and they didn't know how I was going to react. So it wrecked me, and I was not okay. There were days that I would cry and cry and cry, and my family hated to see me like that, but I got over it eventually. Because I realized, like, you know, life's too short to be hung up over people. And also, I think once I got old enough, I just realized that our relationship had ran its course. Like, it was years and years and years of going back and forth, and then we had a great run, and then it was done. I can look back at it and see a lot of great qualities in him. We're still cool to this day. Like, we finally were able to get to a point where it was like, bro, because we were friends first. So it's like, we've always been cool. We've always been friends. And after that whole thing, it was very sour between us for a while because I was very traumatized by him. And, like, there would be times where he would block me and I would air him out, and he would be like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, we're not together anymore, and get over it type thing. And that would irritate me because I was like, why are you treating me like this? Like, it was just really hard for me to get over it. But when I finally did, it was like a weight had lifted off of me, because after that, life lesson number 2, I learned to never let anybody, but especially a man, never let anybody have that much control over me and my emotions. From that day, from that breakup, I never let anybody have that much power over me and my emotions, because it's just not worth it. Nobody should be your entire world. He was my entire world, and that was not healthy. And I realize that now as I'm older. Like, that's why I think he had a hard time, because he felt that way. Like, I am her whole world, and I cannot, well, I can't speak for him, but I feel like that would be daunting to anybody. Like, if you're their entire world and you don't have your own stuff. I didn't have my own hobbies, and I didn't have my own life. He was very sure of himself. I wasn't, and it would rub off on us, the differences. And I think, you know, as I got older, I realized, never let anybody have that much power over you. I remember also after that breakup, you know, I was also going through a severance of friendship. And that was really hard for me, because I was still processing the trauma of the breakup. And so around this time that I'm processing the trauma of the breakup, I'm like, how deep do I want to go? I'm not going to go that deep. I had met different people who weren't really sticking, but I was giving myself to people who didn't deserve it, and I was acting out of character because I was hurt. Another life lesson, number 3, heal. HEAL, period. Heal before you get into a relationship. Please do not get into relationships or talk to people when you have not healed from the previous one. I had not healed, and I was bringing a lot of trauma and toxicity into meeting new people, and I was just loading that onto them because I was heartbroken, and I just said, I'm gonna break other people's hearts, because why the heck not? Like, I wasn't healed, and it wasn't fair to those people because I couldn't give them the love that they needed in the way that they needed it. And so I was kind of just using them for what they could give me, and like discarding it because I felt like it was to protect myself. I didn't want to get hurt again, so I didn't allow myself to get hurt. So there was a period of that. And then when that got done, I was kind of just doing me. And by the way, sorry to those people that I hurt because I did not heal from my relationship prior, but they're doing well, so that makes me happy to see. But yeah, after that I ended up just doing me, and I met my best friend who healed me in a way that men couldn't. You know, true friendship, honestly, is so much better than a relationship with a significant other. Like, meeting somebody who, like, God knew I needed to meet my best friend, because had I not met her, I would not have really had the distraction I needed from being so broken from the men that came into my life at this point. Like, she really just spent time with me. Again, like I said, I was going through a severance of friendship. I was being used, I feel like, from people, by people, and used and abused. And I just felt like at this point, she really saved me because, well, God saved me, but he used her to save me. He used her to help me because I was really going through it. And she was a great friendship that healed me. It gave me somebody to hang out with and somebody to talk to consistently. And yeah, after I healed from that relationship fully, after I fully healed, I can say I was healed. I met somebody. And it was very unexpected. I wasn't looking for it. I was at a roller skating rink, and let's get into this tea. Oh, also, so that's like the end of the Drummer Boy saga, guys. We didn't talk after that again. We hung out as friends, but that was, when I tell you I healed from that relationship, it took me years. But I finally healed from that because it was so traumatic for me. I finally healed from that relationship. So when I was finally healed is when I met somebody else. But we ended up hanging out after that, like, as friends. Like, we were able to be cool. We always were able to be cool after I had really healed from that. But I met somebody in Maryland at a roller skating rink. It was a friend of Ace. Remember that girl I was telling you about? Her friend's friend. And we were like at Ace's friend's house, and we would just talk. And I didn't really look at him. I wasn't really paying attention to him because I was just like in the area. But I don't remember exactly how we ended up talking, but I think everybody left the house and we were the only two people there. And I remember we were just talking about, I think we were watching the movie Happy Feet, and we just were talking about the movie, and I think I remember saying like it was a metaphor for autism. And I think he was just like, you're very weird. And I don't know, like we just talked all night about randomness, and we ended up hitting it off. And then I think he drove me to my car the next morning, and he slick got my number by being like, oh, put your number in the thing so I can text, so you can text me to something. He said something, and I was like, okay. But then he later told me like, I just did that to get your number. But anyway, I remember then like that was what hit it off. And then after we got each other's numbers, we just started texting. And I remember being so like, wow, this is different than what I had known before, because I didn't go and seek anybody out. I just stumbled across this guy, and it doesn't have to do with anything with a type or anything. It was just like random, and we ended up hitting it off. And so I was more hopeful about how this came about, because I wasn't pining after anybody. It was just organic, natural chemistry. So after we talked and we texted, I don't really remember like the context of the relationship. I just know we came from different worlds. Like he came from Maryland and I was from Texas, and we just had very different personalities, but somehow we bonded, and we had a lot in common, and we had a lot to talk about, and we had a lot of chemistry, and it was really weird, and I didn't understand it, but I was intrigued by it. And we just continued to talk and get to know each other and hang out and FaceTime. And I just remember feeling like this time it was different than my first relationship with Drummer Boy. Aries, because I can't think of anything else. So Aries, he wasn't Aries, but that's besides the point. Aries and I got closer. We continued to hang out. And I just remember, like, I'm not going to go into the details of it out of respect, but I just remember it was so different. I can only talk to like the lessons that I learned from this relationship. It was very different to me because we were just getting to know each other. We didn't do anything physical. We were literally getting to know each other, and it was so organic. We just would talk and talk and talk and communicate. And because it was long distance, like, it wasn't just about seeing each other all the time. We had nothing but time to just talk because we couldn't see each other. But it was different than my first relationship because I really felt wanted. Like, I felt, oh, this is what it's like to date somebody who likes you. I hate to say it, but like, that's how it was. Like, I was like, this is how it is to date somebody who likes you. This is a complete difference. Like, he would drive to me an hour. I would drive to him, but he would drive to me. He would make the effort to plan dates. He would make the effort to compliment me. He wouldn't just say, you know what it is. He would actively compliment me. He would, when I would tell him about things, he would say, okay, I'll change. And he would actually change. Like, he was doing all of those things, loving me out loud. Like, when he was with his friends, he'd be like, this is my girl. Like, not ashamed to like show me off and like compliment me and talk to me. And I would confide in him in a lot of things, and he would give me comfort and he would give me advice. And, you know, it was a lot of great things that were in that relationship that I didn't see in my first relationship, that I didn't realize I craved as much as I did until I got in that second relationship and was like, yeah, like, this is what I know I need in my relationships moving forward. So I'm grateful to him for that, because I didn't know what that looks like. I didn't know I could have that until I was in that relationship. So there were a lot of great things about that relationship. I do feel like, there was a particular Virginia Beach weekend trip that I went on with my best friend and her band at the time and him, and that's when he was just like, yeah, I'll go to Virginia Beach with you and I'll pay for it. And I'll pay my half and let's just go. Like, he was just down for whatever. And I was like, wow, like, he really likes me. Like, he went on a whole road trip with strangers because he was that interested in me. Like, it was just, I don't know. It was like, I could tell this time it was different, that it's different when you're in a relationship with a person who really likes you. Get in a relationship with a man who likes you, because I'm telling you, you will know the difference. It's night and day. So other than the good parts of that relationship, I do feel like some flags. I do feel like I moved too fast because, like I said, everything was not based off of physicality. Like, it was based off of really getting to know him. And I feel like when you take out, when you open that door, then that's all it becomes. I don't think that was our demise. I think that was just, like, in my head, something that I didn't need to do, because then that's all it becomes. But that wasn't the case for that relationship particularly. But sidebar. But some red flags was, like, I remember in the beginning, I, like, didn't like the fact that he would always like girls' photos, like half naked photos. Like, I felt like that was disrespectful when you're dating somebody. I still feel that way. I don't like girlfriends, like friends that are girls. That's a red flag for me. If it's not a red flag for you, that's great, but that's a huge red flag for me. You don't need to have friends who are girls. And he, again, Ace's friend was his girlfriend, and they were always really close, and that was off-putting to me, because, hey y'all, I know you're probably like, why is she in a different outfit? What's going on? Completely different day. I don't know where I left off last video, but where I left off, I believe, was talking about Aries and how I learned a lot from that relationship, basically in regards to what I wanted in my next relationship. Like, there were things that my first relationship, with Drummer Boy, he didn't do that Aries did, that I realized I wanted in my relationship, that I was missing, that I didn't realize I needed. So just like loving out loud, complimenting, communication, and like I remember it's the little things that really mattered, you know. Like, I remember one time, I think it was on my period or something like that, and he had sent me a care package of like edible arrangement, and he had picked out, like, made sure not to have any strawberries or any type of berries in it, because everything has strawberries, and he was like, that was the only thing that didn't have strawberries, was like this chocolate covered pineapple. So he like sifted through all of it to get to the specific fruit that I liked, because I didn't like a lot of fruit, and he knew that, and like took the time to do that and send me a bear and a nice note. And it was just really nice, because I hadn't had somebody do little things like that for me. And so, like I said, it was just different to see the difference of how somebody who really likes you in a relationship, you can automatically tell. So that's a lesson, another lesson for you. I don't know how many lessons we're on at this point, but get in a relationship with somebody who likes you. Like, you will know the difference. They are not going to be nonchalant about it. They're going to love you out loud. And if it's not their personality, it's probably just they don't like you that well, because men will do it for people they want to do it for, point blank period. So that relationship, again, it was going well. We would hang out often. There were only a few little things that would bother me, but again, like I said, it was different because it would be like immediately fixed. Like, he would say, okay, I'm gonna not do this, and then it would be fine. So that was really for the summer. Once it hit fall, it was time for us to go back to our respective universities in Maryland and Fairfax, which is not that far away. But again, I brought up the conversation in this relationship too, like, if this was just a summer fling, like, let me know that, like, it's okay, like, we can go our separate ways, and I won't be upset, because life happens. I get it. Like, I was kind of like giving that clause, not that I wanted to, but just because I don't know why I do that, but I always just give them an out, because I want to prepare myself for it, I guess. But same thing like last time. It was like, no, I really want to stay with you. I don't want to break up, and yada, yada, yada. We'll make it work. So when we got to school, our respective schools, we talked for a little bit. Communication continued, but I could tell, again, same thing. You can tell when somebody's withdrawn. I think it was kind of like a fight to come see me. Like, oh, you know, when are you going to come see me? And it was like schedules weren't lining up. Then eventually, when he finally did come see me at my dorm, I could tell the energy was just off. Like, he withdrew from me physically, mentally, and I kind of was just like, Something was wrong, but it wasn't true. And then I think like the catalyst was, so the thing about me is I have like 2 red flags in relationships, or 2 things that I personally don't like. If you don't have that standard for yourself, that's totally fine. But like for me, some standards I have is like, it's a hard no for me when it comes to female friends. Like, I just don't believe in that. If you do, that's cool, but I don't care for you to have any female friends. Like, if you have a female friend, that's fine, but like a female best friend is like odd to me. And he had a female best friend, or has currently, that I kind of was weary of, but she is actually Ace's best friend, the girl I was talking to you about before. So she's a mutual friend. So I was always kind of cool with her. I was cordial, but he was like best friends with her, and that kind of irritated me a little bit, because I was just like, y'all are a little close. But the more I got to hang out with all of them together, we would always hang out just us 3, or not always hang out, but we would occasionally hang out just us 3. And as I got to know her more, I felt more comfortable with her, and so I was like, okay, this is fine. But this is what I mean when I say like certain things are just not okay with me. And like now that I'm older, I can like say, if you like it, cool. I don't, and if you don't respect that, we don't need to be in a relationship. We're just not compatible. Because like I would look back, and he would give her piggyback rides, and they were just very, very close. Like, they would hang out together one-on-one all the time. They would talk a lot, and that just bothered me, because I was like, you kind of feel like, where's my place in this? Because you already have a girl best friend. And it just kind of would like rub me the wrong way, and I didn't really know why, but like I later found out why. But yeah, I don't really care for female friends. I don't want to do it, and I'm not going to be forced into that. Like, if that's what you want and you choose that, then that's what you choose, but don't expect me to stand for that, because I'm not. Point blank, period. And then the other one, I don't do like social media liking and all of that. Like, he would like half naked women on social media, and I felt like that was disrespectful. I didn't like that. I told him about it. He said he would fix it. He continued to do it. The female friends thing, he had multiple female friends, and it's one thing to have a female friend that maybe is like, you know, sometimes they're like, oh, she's doesn't like men, or it's like always an excuse, or like I'm not attracted to her, this or that. But with the female friend, let's call her, I don't know, Clover. So Clover and Aries, but anyway, like I said, liking people's pictures and female friends, those were 2 red flags, and those were things that like he would not give up and didn't care to. And then the more we drifted apart, it was like the more he withdrew from me, the more he withdrew from me, the more he kind of felt like he didn't have to do any of those things. Like, if I felt some type of way about the female friends, I could tell it just became like, well, whatever, I'm gonna do what I want. And once it becomes that, it's just like the relationship is not salvageable, because if you don't care enough about me to respect me and respect my boundaries, or respect what I say I don't like, obviously you don't like me anymore, and like we need to just go our separate ways. So that's kind of like what happened. Like, oh my gosh, the likes thing, there was a female friend that was Clover, and they were very close, and that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But I kind of like let go of it, because I liked him and I trusted him, and I was just like, you know, it's fine. It is what it is. I like got over it because I knew her, and like I hung out with her, and she was a mutual friend, so we were cool. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I trust the situation, whatever. Then there was another female friend that was the same thing. Like, he, what is it? There was another female friend that he had been like cool with, and she was a singer or whatever. And then like, I think I had found some tweets that he had tweeted about how she was attractive, and I had like questioned him about it, like, you know, oh, do you find this person attractive, or did you find her attractive, or no, that way. What happened was, the friend that I found, he would interact with her a lot on socials, and it just see it, and I would kind of just be like, who is this, and like, how do you know her? Because it would be like very friendly. This is basically, to sum it up, I can't do men who are too friendly. Like, if you're in a relationship with somebody and you're too friendly with other women, that rubs me the wrong way. And that's how he was. He had a lot of female friends. He would always be on socials, like, liking stuff that was disrespectful to me, like, and talking to women on the platform, and that was kind of disrespectful to me, because I was like, oh, and then it would be like, oh, she's just my friend. But then I would find things, because I was like, where there's smoke, there's fire, and I would find things of him, like, saying she was attractive and, like, I don't know, flirting, and they would have, oh, see, as I'm talking out loud, like, it's even worse, because I remember there was a post on Instagram he posted, and she had commented something that was, like, very suggestive to me. And I, like, mentioned it to him, like, that's weird, right? And he was like, yeah, it was weird. And I was like, then why did you respond to it? And it was like, oh, well, I didn't know how to respond to it because it was weird, but she's my friend, so I just said what I said. And I was like, when you're too friendly and you don't know how to stop things, then people can just say whatever, and, like, it's just disrespectful, especially on a public platform, and, like, I'm dating you, and you're not stopping that, and so people are seeing that, and it's embarrassing, like, and that's hurtful to me, because I'm like, what's going on? So, again, that was that. More context into that was that I would see things on social media. He would be too friendly with other women, and so, like, I would dig deeper into it, because I'm like, who is this person? And I would find things about him, calling them attractive, and they would flirt back and forth. And I'm like, if you were flirting with this person before me, now you're with me, and you continue to be friendly with them, that was a red flag to me. Especially if I said that makes me uncomfortable and you continue to do it. That was disrespectful to me. And then again, he would have, I think he had another female friend that he would hang out with all the time. But then his excuse for that was, oh, she doesn't like men. But from my past, from my first relationship, it was the same thing where he was like, oh yeah, I have a female, the same thing where he was so friendly with other women, and then I would warn him, like, you probably shouldn't do that. And he would come back later and tell me, oh yeah, I had to stop hanging out with her. And I would be like, why? And he's like, because she said she liked me. I was like, so I was right the entire time. I'm always right. Women just have intuition that men don't. And it's like, you have to realize, as a guy, you may not think she likes you, or you may not be attracted to her, but that's how it is. Like, female friends, a lot of times, or male friends, vice versa, they have ulterior motives. Like, I'm sorry, but it's just life. So don't wait until something happens to be like, oh my gosh, I'm blindsided. Like, I told you from jump, don't entertain anything, because the minute you entertain one little thing, you give somebody an inch, they take a mile. But and now you got yourself into a situation that's nobody's fault but your own. But that anymore, like, I don't even do the whole, yeah, I have a female friend but she doesn't like men, because at the end of the day, like, sexuality is fluid and people can change their minds at any point. Some people then say, oh yeah, I don't like men, and then they find somebody they like and they're like, oh, I'm actually maybe pan. People do that all the time. So I'm just like, I don't even like that excuse, because it's really just excuses. And if I say I don't like something, I feel like if you really truly like me as a partner, one, you wouldn't want to go searching for anybody else, and two, like, I would be enough. And two, if I say I don't like something because you like me enough or respect me enough, you would stop doing it. And vice versa. If you told me there was something you didn't like, I would also stop doing it. So that's rule number 5. Women, like, if you set boundaries, set your boundaries and stick to them. Set your standards and stick to them. And if they don't listen to that, they do not like you, and they do not care about you or respect you. Because any man who loves you, cares about you, respects you, is not going to argue with you. Is not going to argue with you or go back and forth about boundaries that you have set. For whatever reason you may set those boundaries, I don't have to go back and forth with you on that. Like, I set the boundaries I set, and if you love and care about me, you're going to respect them. And if you don't want to, bye. It is that simple. What you won't do, another man will, and have no problem doing it. So that was another lesson I learned from that relationship. That demise was ultimately, like I said, the last time he saw me at my dorm, he was very withdrawn. I could already tell something was off. And then I think, like I said, there was something about social media with the friend who was too friendly. The girl I said was too friendly, and I questioned him about it, and he was really defensive about it, and we were going back and forth, and I was just like, well, then you don't have to come see me, and like, we don't have to do this anymore, basically is what I said. Like, and I remember, like, in the midst of us arguing, he was literally posting on Snapchat, like, dancing, like, he didn't care. And I remember being so mad, because I was like, how are you going to be on social media, like, acting so jolly, and like, we are not in a good place right now. But that really made me upset, because I was just like, okay, you really don't care. But yeah, after I said that whole message, it was like, again, you can tell when people are done with you, because it was literally like I said that. It was like, basically, you can tell when men have moved on, or found somebody else, right? Because after I said that, it was like perfect. I could tell it was like, oh, a sigh of relief. I didn't have to be the one to break up with her. I pushed her away so she would break up with me, and now I can do whatever I want. Which to me translated as, I found somebody else, now I can go pursue them because I got rid of her. Because very shortly after, we broke up in the summer, and he was with somebody in the fall and has been with them ever since. For years now. So it's like, I really just feel like we went our separate ways in school. He met somebody else that he was more, into. Life happens. And he ended up moving on with her, and kind of just like, our relationship faded. But, which is fine, because life happens. But I think what that relationship taught me was, like I mentioned, what I want in a relationship and what things I won't settle for. But also, after everything kind of settled, the way that people responded to me was, again, similar to like my first relationship. And that's why I kind of have a different approach to people when they go through breakups, because I feel like anytime somebody goes through a breakup, people, they treat them like, what people don't realize is breakups are really grief. Now, I have not grieved a person very close to me, but breakups to me are they're like grief to me. You go through all the stages of grief, your heart is broken, and people have sympathy when somebody is dead, but people don't have sympathy when you go through a breakup. Everybody's like, well, everybody goes through it, like, get over the man. And that's kind of how people treated me. Like, when me and Aries broke up, everybody around me, because Ace was friends with, remember, they were all mutual, Clover was friends with him, and me and Clover and him used to be kicking it, and she would act like we were best friends, but then the minute we broke up, they all treated me like I was dead. And I just was like, oh my gosh, like, it was so weird to go from talking to somebody every single day, saying you love the person, and then an argument happens and they treat you like you're disposable. And that happened to me twice. That was the second time that happened to me. My first relationship was like that, and then my second relationship was like that. And it really, like, messed with me mentally, because I just felt like I could never do that. Like, if I said I love you, I mean I love you, and I can't just, like, detach myself. Like, it takes me a minute to, like, get over it, because I literally, when I say I love somebody, and I don't understand how people do it. Like, I don't understand how people just completely detach themselves and say, oh, never knew you, and act like it's fine. But I don't know, that was always weird to me. And then, like, all of my friends around me, like, I just remember that point, like, Ace's mutual friend Clover, all of my friends would just be like, because he was part of that circle, they all just kind of were treating me like, you need to get over it, and you're being embarrassing, and stop contacting him. Like, I remember, like, a lot of things happen, and I, like, would try to reach out, and they would just, I don't know, treat me kind of like her again. Like, get over it, move on. And it's like, how can you move on when you were literally in love with this person? But I surely found out that, like, he had moved on already, because he had found somebody else. So it's easy to move on and heal when you're not single. Like, it's easy to get over something when you have somebody to distract you, and when you jump from relationship to relationship, it's easy to do that. But for me, I didn't really ever have that luxury. Like, I took time every time after a breakup to really, like, to really break and heal and learn. And I didn't have the luxury to have somebody else to just jump to. I wish I did, because then I would have been distracted, but I didn't have it. So I would have to go through the healing process. But I figured out in life, which is another lesson for me from that relationship, was like, it's better to go through that hurt now and heal properly, so that when I get into the next relationship, I'm not bringing all of my trauma. And like I said, I don't want to be 50 years old and I was with somebody for 20 years and then I look back and say I don't know myself because I just jumped from relationship to relationship and I never gave myself time to be single. I don't want that. So I'm like, it hurts, but it's beneficial to do it that way than to just relationship hop. In my
What's good for me? That's my opinion!
So, yeah, it was really tough for me to get over the second one, because it was like, wow, I thought this time it was going to be different, especially after it triggered me back to my first relationship breakup. It was hard, even though it wasn't as long of a relationship. It hurt a little bit more because I think I had hope again, and then that was crushed. So that was hard. All the people around me acting like they were my best friends and then like treating me like I was nothing afterwards, that was hard. You know, and then later I found out that Clover and Aries had slept together, not when we were together, but before, and it never told me, and I was just kikiing around them, and that was hard. I found that out after the fact, and I was like, so y'all was just gonna hang around me and nobody wanted to tell me, and I looked like an idiot the whole time? Like, you didn't think that was something I needed to know? Okay. That's why I said, like, the female friend thing is very hard for me, because I'm just like, oftentimes they have a close relationship and decided to be friends, or so-and-so, like it's always fishy. And that's why I just would rather not have it, because I don't want to have to deal with the back and forth or the confusion. I would rather just sever it. And I don't think that's hard. I don't think that's too much to ask. Comment down below if y'all feel the same way about female friends. I know that's a hard topic, because a lot of people are like, it's fine, but when you're single, you can do what you want. When you're in a relationship, you can't do that. How many married people do you know have female friends or male friends? Come on. Like, it's just not a thing when you get older and you get married. It's just not a thing, because it's not wise and it's not necessary. You don't need to be venting to anybody about your relationship unless they're a marriage counselor or somebody who's been married as well, a couple. Like, you can have couple friends, but why do you need to have female friends? If you've known somebody for a long time, I get it, but why are you getting introducing new people into your life of the opposite sex? I don't understand it. Comment down below if you think I'm crazy, but that's my standard. And then the same thing with social media. Some people don't care about likes and comments. Some people are like, it's just socials. But to me, I don't like that stuff. I feel like everything is a slippery slope, and the other person on the other end is always like, you know, liking stuff, and then the person questions and they feel some type of way. So you're still doing the same stuff you used to do when I was in a relationship. Okay, got it. And that was all I needed to know. That was confirmation, like, okay, so it's not that I was crazy, it's that certain people will allow things that you may or may not allow. Everybody has a different standard. You just have to find somebody, lesson number 6, you just have to find somebody who has the same values and standards as you. There's nothing wrong with, like, if I said I don't like female friends and the social media thing I don't like, there's plenty of other people who don't like it, or they don't care. Go find somebody who doesn't care. Lesson 7, don't try to force any man to do what you want them to do. Let them, if it's not of their character, or it doesn't come naturally to them and they feel like they're forcing themselves to do something just to please you, after a while it's gonna get old. So it's like, you might as well just let them do them. And if it aligns with what you care about, cool. If it doesn't, you may just have to go your separate ways, because you cannot force a man to do anything he doesn't want to do. That's point blank period. Find a woman who goes through with it. That's what he did, and they're happily ever after, even still. And I even ended up, unrelated, Ace had a birthday party. I ended up meeting the girlfriend, and like, we actually were cool with each other. Like, I don't have any issues with her. It was never an issue with her. We would go back and forth, like me and Aries would go back and forth, because I was hurt and I didn't understand it at the time. Now that I look back, I can say I was doing a lot, and I understand why everybody around me was so like, move on and this is awkward, because he had moved on. And you know, even Clover, like, she was like, oh my gosh, like, you guys are couple goals, and that used to hurt me, because I was like, you used to say the same thing about us and act like we were cool, and now you're doing it not even a month later with somebody else. Like, it just didn't seem genuine to me. It was a lot of things that were like, I questioned a lot of people around me. Like, I was like, just seems like fake love all around me. I didn't know who was my true friends. Like, it was a lot. I lashed out a lot of times because I was hurt. And so we would go back and forth, and I would have those moments. And I like look back now, and I shouldn't have acted that way, because I was acting out of character only because I was hurt. And that doesn't excuse it. But again, I go through a process of grieving. I go through a process of grieving. Like, I even remember being like, oh, you know, maybe we could get back together. Like, maybe we could this and that. And like, at that point, he was so over it. And I was like, how are you so over it? Because I didn't realize at the time he had moved on. So yeah, that was a whole lot of mess, and it just continued to go on. I think that one hurt probably the most, because with my first relationship, I was the only one who had ties to him. The only people who knew Drummer Boy was me and like the people around me. My friends only knew of him because of him. The second relationship, it impacted a lot of my friendships even till this day, because we were in a similar friend group. They were all hanging around together. And even later on in life, like Ace and another friend of mine, like, they all used to hang out with them in Maryland together, Clover, all of them. And I would feel very left out, because I was like, that used to be me. I used to be hanging out with all of them. That I was their friend. You know, I was his girlfriend. Well, I wasn't his girlfriend, but y'all know, we were together. So I would see things like that on social media, and like, I don't think my friends at the time understood how that made me feel. I don't think, or maybe they didn't care, but I don't think they understood how it made me feel to see things like that on social media. That's why I would like block people, I would unfollow people, because I was just like, I don't want to see that. Like, I'm still hurting. Imagine seeing somebody that you're in love with and still processing in love with another person, and you're all kikiing together and having a great time partying and laughing, and it's like everybody's happy except you. Imagine. And you have to see that constantly, because your friends don't care. They feel like, well, he's my friend, I'm gonna do what I want. And that was very hurtful to me. And also, like, later on in life, I remember, like, I had gotten over it, because then we would even follow each other. Like I said, I met his girlfriend, and like, she was really cool, and I had no issues with her. I followed her. I would, you know, DM her back and forth. Like, we were cool. We were all pretty much cool. Like, enough years have passed that I was like okay with them. But even like new friends of mine would still hang out with him, and I just always felt like, if the shoe was on the other foot and you broke up with somebody who you really loved, and it was messy, and I was hanging out with them all over and blasting it all over social media, how would you feel? You know what I mean? Like, and I don't think people really put that into perspective when the shoe is on the other foot. It's very easy for me to put myself in the other person's shoes, but when it comes to other people, they always treat me like it's not that big of a deal, but if it was them, it would be. So I'm always having to diminish like my feelings, and other people are able to lash out and act out and be whatever. But when I do it, it's like, no, calm down, it's not that big of a deal. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm probably rambling at this point, but my point is saying there was a lot of hurt after the fact. And comment down below if that bothers you or not. Like, if you think, okay, after the fact, if we're done, I don't care, or no, that would bother me too, if like all my friends were hanging out with my ex and we weren't on good terms. Comment down below, because I always thought that was weird, but then I thought maybe I'm just weird, you know, like maybe I'm weird. But even like Ace and the people afterwards, they would continue, like to this day, they still are like, oh my gosh, like still really cool with them, everything. Like, they're still to this day like, that's bestie, and nobody cares. And I'm like, that's fine, because I got over it. But I always thought that was weird. Like, in the heat of it, when I was still going through it, that used to really bother me, because I was like, what the heck, y'all really don't care. Okay. But that's how I felt back then. So yeah, I think that was pretty much everything I wanted to say from that relationship, because that was pretty much that was pretty much, that. It's a lot of other things that go into it, but that was pretty much the gist. And I learned a lot from it. And now that I finally am healed and I can look back at it, I'm like, everything happens for a reason. Everybody's not meant for you. Every friend group is not meant for you. God separates us from people for a reason. So sometimes people aren't bad people. They're just, things happen. Life happens. I got older. I realized that. Like, not everything is about you. You can't take everything personally. You got to just live your life and say, be blessed, be merry. So that's how I felt when everything was said and done. I'm like saying these things now, processing it from that place. Now I'm in a place where like I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm like so far removed from that. I had a whole child. Like, so much more trauma has happened to me that little relationship, I look back and I'm like, I was really tripping. But in the time, that's how I felt, and my feelings were valid. But I'm processing it from that place because now I don't care. Like, it's been so many years. It is what it is. That being said, moving on from him, again, I had a few other people that I talked to here and there. Nothing worth my while. I went through another cycle again where it was just like acting out of trauma and being hurt and being toxic and dealing with people who didn't really serve me. I will say, like, segue, casual sex is a scam. Like, I know I just jumped ship, but I'm telling you the truth. Like, casual sex is a scam. People, like, in college, that's the culture, and, like, people do it, and, like, it is what it is. But, like, if you're kingdom, you're not king. We put kingdom over culture, right? So, trying to do what culture is doing and society was doing is just, it messes with your head. It's not beneficial for you. Like, I'm saying it for us young women, we need to protect our bodies, because I know everything out there is sex, and sex sells, and everything is promoted for sex. And it's just like, it's not healthy to do it. It's not meant to be doing it with random people and giving yourself to people and opening yourself up to their demons and their trauma and everything that they have. And then they're messing with your head because they're not claiming you, and you're doing an act with somebody that's supposed to be sacred, and you're doing it with, it just is, it's ruining it, and it's ruining you. And it's really important to protect yourself as a woman, because nobody is looking out for you like you are. Nobody has your best interest like you are. People are going to lie to you and say it is what it is, it's the culture, but I'm telling you, it does not serve you. It's best to wait till you're married, but I know it's not practical. But wait for people to show you that they deserve you before you give them everything. I made the mistake in a lot of my relationships of giving everything to people, and they didn't deserve it. And I really feel like if I had been more discerning about who I did that to, I could have saved myself a lot of heartache, a lot of trouble, a lot of years. So that is a little segue on that. I left school at that point and left college. It wasn't compatible with me. It wasn't healthy for me. I had to leave. The pandemic hit 2020, and I was home. I was focusing on myself. I was home. I wasn't really seeing anybody like that. Like, I was literally just focusing on myself. I was in my prayer book. I was in my Bible, because we didn't know if the world was going to end or not. And I was home, and I was by myself. So I really did not do anything, really. I was home, and it was good for me to have that detox. Oh, no. 2020, I actually did meet somebody. I was like, I'm missing someone. I did meet somebody. He's actually my friend now. We'll call him Poet. So Poet was somebody that I met when I ended up going to this vegan soul food place, and like me and my best friend literally just ran into him, and she was like, oh, he's cute, and I was like, yeah. And he had a shirt on because the whole entanglement thing happened with Jada and Will, and so he had the shirt on that said like entanglement, and I was like, how the heck did you get that shirt? This just came out yesterday. And he said, I make shirts, and he made the shirt himself. And I was like, that's cool. Followed him on socials. We ended up talking some, and we hit it off. And it was so random because, again, this is like how I say, I do not look for love. I do not look for romance. It finds me. Like, I literally, like, people find me out of nowhere. I ran into that man, like, randomly. Like, I didn't even search for him. He was there. And, you know, we ended up talking. It was very organic, which is how I like it. I don't like things to be forced. Like, I don't like it to be, what's your favorite color? And how did let's play 21 questions. I don't like that. A lot of the relationships, like, I didn't even mention were like that. It was too forced, and the person liked me more than I liked them, and it wasn't organic, and it didn't flow right, or it was a casual relationship that didn't go anywhere, toxic. Like, it was always things like that in between. This was like the first time that it was hope again. And I was like, okay, this could go somewhere. This has promise. Like, he checked all of the boxes a lot for me. So Poet and I went out on a date. Again, this is like different than what I'm used to because he was a little older, but not that much older than me. But I could tell, like, okay, this is like somebody who's more mature and like knows what they want, because it was like very soon after we were talking. We had a lot in common. We hit it off a lot. He was the one to be like, oh, like, let's go out to this, like, let's go out, I think, to the museum was our plan. So it was like a nice date. Like, that was probably like that was like my first, well, that was one of those dates that like made me feel, again, hope again, because I hadn't really dated and been on an official date in a long time, like since Aries. So it was nice to have, like, okay, hope of that happening again, because it had been so long. So that day ended up being really great. We talked like the entire time. We didn't even end up walking inside the museum because we just stayed outside and talked the whole time. We just had like that kind of connection instantly, kind of similar to me and Aries. Like, we just could talk a lot, like, all day about everything. And I feel like ultimately that, I think, again, I give too much of myself to people too soon. I get kind of excited and hopeful, and then that's why I think it's a lesson to young women to protect yourself, because men judge after they feel like when the challenge is gone and when the challenge and the mystery is gone, they feel like, well, there's not much left anymore, you know, to discover. You have to give them something to want to discover and get to know. You have to not overshare. Like, I don't just mean physical, like, I mean in everything. Like, you can't share too much, you can't give too much at the beginning, because I feel like they get to a point where they're like, okay, they get overwhelmed. Let's be honest, they get overwhelmed, and then they withdraw. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily all that was the issue with Poet. I think there was a lot of different things that he hadn't healed from past relationships, and like I hadn't healed from, and like a lot of times, sometimes we got along well, but when it came to like relationship, and like I would push for a lot of things, like, okay, like, I need more communication, or I need to see you more, you're not making an effort to see me. And I come down to Richmond, like I would come down to Richmond often, and he would never like make time to see me. I'd be like, I'm in Richmond, and it's like, oh, okay. Like, it was not, after a while, it just got to a point where it was like, I could tell, like, you can tell when people no longer care for you in that way. But I would continue to get frustrated, because I was like, we get along so great, like, we have such a great relationship, but like the actual relationship part was just too much work. It would always be too hard. I would always feel like I was basically begging for him to want me, and it shouldn't be that way. Again, like, refer back to the other lessons that we've talked about. If a man wants you and wants to be with you, it's not going to be a fight. I promise you, it will never be a fight. It will never be anything that you have to, like, yes, there will be struggle. It's not going to be completely easy, but it's not going to be a fight for him to claim you, to want you, nothing like that. To see you, they're going to want to see you. They're going to make time for you. he was not making time for me because he did not care. It wasn't that he didn't care about me. It was just that that ultimately was not what was meant to happen between us. And then after a while, like, there would be ultimatums. I would block him. We would argue, like, because it just wasn't sticking. And I think I was just frustrated that he wouldn't just give me a chance, I guess. In my head, I was like, if you just give me a chance, I could be a great girlfriend. Like, we get along so well. Like, why are you fighting it so much? But ultimately, he was fighting it because he didn't want it. And that's life. Like, you can't force somebody to want to be with you. And ultimately, I gave up. I would be so frustrated because I cared so much and I wanted it to work, but it didn't work. And I got tired of fighting. And eventually, like I said, I would block him. We wouldn't talk. But I just said, you know what? I'm just going to be his friend. And I said, if I'm his friend, it's better to be his friend and stay in his life this way than to try and force a relationship that's just not going to happen. And that actually was something that used to happen in my first relationship with Drummer Boy. Like, we would be friends and he would talk to me about girls and I would act like I was cool with it because I just wanted to be in his life, but it would really hurt me. And so in this relationship, it was kind of the same thing. Like, I was like, okay, I'll be his friend and go along with it. And he would talk to me about girls and I would try to act like I was okay with it. But in reality, it would hurt my feelings because I still had feelings for him. And I still, in the back of my head, was thinking, maybe one day we'll be together, just not today. Like, I kind of, like, if you love somebody, let them go. And if they come back to you, it was meant to be. It's kind of how I was treating it. Until eventually, like I said, my feelings would get hurt. And I would just block him and, like, get over it. I even think one time we went out to DC. We went to, what is it called? A museum, actually, that time. What is it called? It's a specific, if I remember it, I'll link it. I'll put it on the screen. A museum that we went to, and, like, I got all dressed up. It was like a date night, but it wasn't a date. It was like a date night, and I remember being like, okay, this is gonna rekindle whatever we had. And, like, the night was over, and he, like, I was like, maybe, like, this will ignite a spark. And, like, he was asleep in the car the entire way home. And I had to drive all the way from DC to Richmond with this man sleep next to me in the car. I wanted to punch him so bad. I was like, wow. So not only did and I remember being in the restaurant too, and people were looking at me, and I was like, literally everybody wants me but you. Everybody wants me but the person I wanted. I was like, all I want is you, and, like, I wanted this to be a date, and it wasn't even a date. It was just casual friends hanging out was how he saw it. But I was like, oh, maybe it's a date. It wasn't. Everybody was looking at me like they wanted me. I looked great. I'll insert what I looked like if I could find those pictures. The dress was looking right. The body was looking right. I felt so good, and it was not a date. Like, it was, nothing happened. He slept on the car ride home, and I drove the entire 2 hours by myself because, again, I forced it. I was the one like, hey, let's do this. Like, I was forcing the issue, and he was just saying, okay, why not? Because it was a free ride. And here I was using it as an opportunity for something when it was never. I was delusional. So I was literally delusional. So eventually, after giving up and just being his friend, guys, I ended up just being his friend. Like, and I'm still his friend to this day. He probably is gonna watch this and be like, this is embarrassing. But literally, like, to this day, I'm still his friend. And it was so much better. Eventually, I stopped pining and waiting for something to happen of what if, and I just gave up. And I just ended up being cool with just being his friend. And the feelings went away. I stopped caring about it. I stopped forcing issues. And I realized if people just don't like you, you don't need to force it. They just don't like you, and that's what it is. Like, let it go. And I let it go, and now we're cool, and it's so much better that way. I like him so much better as my friend. Like, I could never see us together in that way. Like, now that I'm, like, out of that time, I'm like, I don't even know why I fought it so hard, because we work so much better as friends. And I know I said the whole thing about male friends, this and that, but it's really like, that's like my older brother in my head. Like, I don't know why I ever tried to force it, because that just wasn't what it was meant to be. Like, he was meant to be in my life, just not to the capacity I thought he was going to be. And that's okay. Like, life happens. You learn. You grow. It is what it is. So, and every now and then, we'll have our spats. Like, I get defensive and he gets defensive. But that's always my friend. Like, he's always going to be my friend. We're cool. And that relationship taught me a lot, because he is very smart and mature, and he taught me a lot about maturity and growth. I learned a lot about myself. He taught me a lot about like why I do things, and like how we would just pick each other's brains a lot, and like it helped me for my thought process to realize why I acted the way I acted. And like, I grew up a lot from that relationship, and just him being in my life and being my friend. So I'm very grateful to him for that. And I always felt really safe around him and protected. Even now, like, I know he's got my back no matter what. We still care about each other, but again, not to that capacity. Like, that's my friend. That's my big brother. That's it. And it's better that way. It's so much better that way. But anyway, that was that. After that, I feel like, no. There was a few people who would come back in my life here and there. They would show up, pop up, but nobody significant. And then 2021, I moved to my apartment. I moved to Richmond. Again, that was also the time where I felt like if I moved to Richmond and we were closer and distance wasn't a factor anymore, that would solve the relationship. No. So in my delusion, I thought that was gonna help. Like, he helped put my bed together, everything, and I was like, maybe it could work, but no. Friends. But I ended up meeting somebody. Now we're gonna go into the next relationship and final relationship before my child's father. So, but we're not even gonna go into him, so this is pretty much it. We'll call this man Red. So Red lived underneath my apartment. I was at my best friend's birthday. We ended up living in the same apartment complex, I know. And she had a birthday party, and I remember I was going down the elevator with our mutual friend at the time, and we both saw him, or I saw him, and I peeked around the corner because I was like, who is that? And he saw me like break my neck at him, and he was like, got up and like ran to see me, and like got my number inside the elevator. And then I went up to the party or whatever, because I was like, oh, he's really cute, tall, whatever. So then when I went to the party, he was like immediately texting me, and he was like, where are you at? And I was like, this is where I'm at this party upstairs. And he even came at one point. Yes, very bold. And we hung out, and like ever since then I just kept his contact, because he was in my building. So I just kept his contact, and there were occasional times that we would hang out. Like, he would come over, we would talk all night about literally nothing. And I like told myself things were going to be different. I made the point to be like, this is different. I do not, believe in casual relationships. I don't believe in giving yourself to somebody too soon. Like, I really waited because I saw the effects of what happened when you are doing things too soon. So I was just like, I made it a point to set that boundary. But of course, if you don't enforce the boundary, guys kind of just use it, they look at it as a challenge. Like, if you don't enforce those boundaries and you put yourself in positions to challenge it, they're just going to test it always, because there's always the risk that the risk is worth the reward is worth the risk in their eyes. So they're always going to try you. And if you don't have the strength to enforce it, it's all null and void. It's just talk. So that's basically what happened with him. Again, we hit it off really well. We had great times together. We had great conversation. We talked about a lot of different things, his past, my past, we came from different worlds, but like we had a lot in common, like, which was similar to the other people I talked about before. And again, this was different. It wasn't just like people I didn't really care about. Like, I was very attracted to him and drawn to him and connected to him in a way that wasn't like other people. And also, it helped me because it took my mind off of Poet, because it was like, okay, this is somebody new, and like my mind was distracted because I was hung up on Poet for a while. And so this was kind of like something that broke away from that for me and gave me different perspective. And Poet was allowed to just be my friend because I was dealing with this guy. So we ended up just eventually getting into a relationship. Again, very casual, like I wasn't being loved out loud. I wasn't being shown the love that I needed or deserved. And it was very toxic because he was not easily accessible. And so it was like I just had to take what I could get with him. Like, if he talked to me, it was what it is. If he showed up, it was what it was. He would just show up. And because he was right below me, apartment wise, it was like we had too much access to each other. So it was just like we didn't want to leave each other alone because we would be bored. Like, hey, I'm bored, come over. Hey, I'm bored, what are you doing? We lived in the same apartment, so it was just like we had way too much access to each other and we didn't know how to stay away. And it just made it that much harder to let go of him because it was like we had so much access and we had a connection. But that was as far as it was. Practically, it wouldn't have never worked out. Logically, it didn't make sense. Morally, it didn't make sense. It was so many things that were wrong with it. But you know, when things feel so wrong, they feel so right. That's how it was with him. But I remember there was one time, like, we were all together, and I just feel like that was another time where I was basically begging somebody to choose me. Like, we get along so well, why don't you want to just be with me? You know, why is it such a fight for you to do what I want you to do? Why is it such a fight for you to just show up for me? Why do I have to give everything and I don't get anything in return? That's always how it felt with him. And it would be like everything was a joke, nothing was taken seriously with him. And yeah, it was just really bad. I remember there was one time, like, this was like the last straw. It was the same thing. I would block, unblock. We would go through a toxic cycle, and I would realize my worth and block him and then unblock him because I would, again, too much access. It was that constant cycle until one day, like, my friends didn't like him. They would always tell me we don't like him. And one day was the final straw because, you know, we were all drinking. At this point, I'm obviously of age, but we're all of age, but we were drinking, and he had jokingly, like, did this to my jaw, and I was like, it wasn't like he punched me, it was just like he nudged my jaw, but it was hard enough for me to be like, I don't like that. It was hard enough for me to sober up and be like, even if as a joke, that's not cute to me. I don't play around that way. I've never played around like that way. Another standard for myself, I do not call anybody out of their name. I don't tolerate being called out of my name, and I don't put my hands on anybody. So I don't expect anybody to put their hands on me in any capacity. Like, I don't play that way. So it's like, because that's how things happen. So it's like, you know, once that happened, I like really sobered up, and I was like, I don't play that, don't do that. And like, my friends had a whole intervention for me for that man. Like, you don't need to talk to that man anymore, he is very bad for you, we don't like him for you. And my friends normally don't do that. Like, normally we're the type of people where it's like we let people make their own decisions, but that particular guy, they did not like me talking to, because that was the most toxic relationship I'd ever been in. Like, that was not me. He was not good for me at all, and they saw it, and they literally told me, and I wrote a letter to him and I slid it under his door, and I didn't talk to him after that. Like, I was like, we have to separate, like, I can't do this anymore. And we did not talk. I remember I saw him, I ran into him in the elevator one time, and it was so awkward, but like we didn't talk. He ended up moving to North Carolina, and I remember I saw him the day he moved, and I bawled my eyes out. I cried to Snow Allegra, like I was like in my feels. But it was also like after that I never cried about it again, because it was just like he was toxic for me, and I hadn't talked to him for a month because I was already like doing the severance again. But when he moved, it really just like solidified that, you know, when you're like, oh, we'll break up but maybe we'll talk again. That's kind of how I was. But like he ended up moving, and it was like, wow, I'm never gonna see this man again. So that's why I cried, because I was just like, I wasted all this time, and now this man is moving, and like I had nothing to show for it. But then he would come back to Richmond a lot, and he would hit me up, and I would just be like, I don't even really want to fool with you, because like I'm off. I'm like, no, I was turned off at that point. And then I remember, so in our relationship there was a girl that he would mention, that he like mentioned to me, and he was like, do you know this girl? She happened to be a mutual friend of my best friend. And I was like, yeah, so my best friend knows her, that's her friend. Richmond is a tight circle. And so like he would be like, oh, okay. And I was like, why? And he was like, nothing, she's just always in my DM, whatever, thirsting after me. And I was like, yeah, she's like a celebrity, because she was very famous on socials. Like she had a large following. He was like, no, I'm the celebrity. Like he was always very arrogant. He was very like, dare I say, narcissistic. Like there was a lot of red flags and things he would do that I just kind of excused. And like now looking back, I'm like, no, he really was kind of crazy. But there were the good times too, and so that offset it. But that same girl, I say that to say like fast forward, the same girl that guys tell you not to worry about, he ended up getting with her shortly after me. So again, triggering back to the Aries relationship. He got with somebody, we were together in the summer, broke up, and he got with somebody in the fall, and he was with her literally like from then until maybe, and is still messing with her now. Like, and again, the same thing. He didn't claim me, but he claimed her. Like, he was quick to claim her. And I'm not saying this to be disrespectful, but like for perspective, like if y'all know Halle Bailey and like the Ruby Rose situation and DDG, it was kind of like that. Like I'm the Halle Bailey and she was the Ruby Rose. Like two completely different aesthetics, but like she got the title. So anytime people are always saying like, you know, I would never wife this type of girl or this or that, they're lying. They'll do whatever they please. So it's like, you just do you, because at the end of the day, somebody isn't going to care. They're going to choose whoever they want to choose at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. So that's kind of how it was with her. Like he ended up claiming her. And the reason why I found out about the girl was because she had commented something wild under his Instagram. I was like, she must be sleeping with him, because nobody would be that bold to say that. And then when I asked him about it, he like completely deleted the post, or like turned all the comments off. So I was like, okay, he's definitely sleeping with her. He was just a liar. Like he would lie about a lot of things. He would be talking to other girls while talking with me. And I was just like, I would ask him about it and he would lie. And I'm like, why do you have to lie? Like I remember we would go through each other's phones like as fun. And like, because I didn't care, I was like, we're not, because that's the thing is like when you're not dating somebody and you're in a casual relationship, it's so confusing, because like it was always the back and forth of, you shouldn't be talking to somebody, but why do you care, because we're not really dating, and da-da-da, and it shouldn't, and it's that back and forth, but I have feelings, but da-da. And I remember he would talk to me about girls, and that would like hurt my feelings, because I really cared about him, but like I couldn't care because we weren't together technically. So all of that crap, I will never do that to myself ever again, because it's stupid. Why deal with somebody who does not want you? It's like, now that I look back at myself as a young woman, do not settle for that, because that is so like, you deserve so much more. You deserve somebody who is going to treat you like a priority and not an option. Like you deserve somebody who is going to be there for you 100%. You deserve somebody you don't have to beg to like you or to love you or to claim you. Like if they like you, they will, and if they don't, chuck up the deuces and leave. Because know your worth. If you knew your worth, you would be single. Like that is the catchphrase of everything. If you knew your worth, you would be single, y'all. Like, please be single. Please do not settle. These men do not like you. It's not worth it. There's too many fish in the sea for you to settle for a man who does not like you. So yeah, he ended up getting with her, and you know, that hurt me for a while too, because I was just like, why are these men not claiming me? Why am I getting into relationships that don't serve me? This is not fair. Like, I'm hurting and these men just get to do me any type of way and then get in a relationship and thrive, and I'm here suffering and having to go through the whole grieving process all over again. We're starting from zero. And specifically in that relationship, he was not thriving. Like, it felt that way for a whole year that they were together, because I didn't really hear anything or see anything. All I saw on socials, like, he was loving her out loud. They would go on dates together. She got the time, everything. And I would have to see it, and I was just grieving, but I was going through it. I said, it is what it is. But then later on, a lot of things ended up being revealed. Like, later on in life, I think they had broken up at one point, and again, he came back into my life. But I had moved at that point, so it was like, it didn't matter. But there was a lot of toxicity in that relationship, and there was domestic violence in that relationship, even to this day. And I realized after the fact, like, the grass is not greener on the other side. Like, vengeance is really the Lord's, because I used to feel like this man is thriving and he got to do me any sort of way, and this man is not thriving. To this day, he is not thriving. He will be calling me, venting to me about this girl, complaining about the relationship, how toxic it was. Now they're having domestic violence disputes. It's just really bad for him. And it's like, I can't help but think, like, you chose that. Like, you could have been with me and stayed with me and whatever. It would have been bad for me. It would have been great for him. But you chose to go see if the grass was greener, and now you're in mess. To this day, he's in mess. But also, I realized that God saved me from that, because that would have been me. I would have been in mess had I continued to deal with this man. I ended up having to leave because I ended up getting pregnant. That's a whole other story. I met my child's father. I'm not going to go into that relationship. But I will just say this. I met him while I was in the process of getting over... Did I get Red? While I was in the process of getting over Red, I met him, my child's father. And the reason why I was able to let my guard down with him was because it was the opposite of everything I was going through with Red. I felt like this man was older. He was mature. He was, he telling me what he wanted, like, planning my schedule to go on date with me. Like, I just felt like where all the flags were red with my last relationship, all the flags were green with this one. And that made me let my guard down enough to, like, be hopeful to have another relationship with this man. But it didn't end up working out that way. I ended up getting pregnant, and we're not going to go into that. Not today. But I just say that to say, again, I took a long break from dating and just sat with myself, because I felt like every single relationship I got in, as you could tell from this video, every single relationship I got in was just not successful. And I was starting to feel very defeated, because I feel like I keep getting hopeful again and getting hopeful again. And then these men are just doing me any kind of way. I'm losing myself. I'm giving myself. I'm losing myself. And it was just a constant cycle. And I didn't know I was pregnant at the time, but I was just fasting, and I was just like, Lord, like, help me be ready for the relationship I'm meant to be, and all of this stuff. I ended up getting pregnant with my son. My son, obviously, while I was pregnant with my son, I really just could only reflect, because I was pregnant. I couldn't really do nothing. And then this whole almost year that I've been raising him, it has been the same thing. I've been focusing on myself. I haven't really been dating or talking to anybody. Like, it's just been me. And it's been so healthy, because I really had to focus on, when I moved in my apartment and, like, this stage of my life, I really had to focus on me and what was best for me and what I needed, and loving myself and self-love. And that is so important, ladies. Like, I guess this is like because I'm done after this. This is like the final lesson that I will say to young ladies and young women, or women around there, even if you're 40 and maybe you're finding yourself single again. Really take the time to relish in this time that you're single. Really take the time to not date. I'm telling you, I really don't think you should date in that single time. Just love on you and figure out what it is that you love. Go to therapy, heal from your trauma. Do not go into new relationships with old trauma. Do not jump from relationship to relationship. It's not healthy. Focus on you, love on you, so that when you get in another relationship, you're ready and you're not bringing trauma into it. Because women, we do that. We will say men aren't, but we have to release that trauma that we have so that we can be ready for a relationship. So when the right guy comes along, we know what to look for and we are open to receiving it. I really think it's beneficial to write down things that you want in a partner, and not, you can write down physical things, but write down characteristics, things, compile a list of all the things you don't want in a relationship and all the things you do based off of the relationships you've been in. Learn from your experiences and cultivate your perfect man. No man is perfect, but we all have standards and things that we'll settle for. You just have to decide for yourself what is worth fighting for and what is worth a battle worth giving up. What is something you're willing to put up with and what is something you're not willing to put up with? And everybody's standards are different. So you have to find what that is for yourself, set your boundaries and stick to it. I also think it's beneficial to not sleep with people. I think it's beneficial to, when you do get in a relationship, date them. Do not overshare. Do not give every part of yourself too early. Really take the time to learn who the person is and take those baby steps. I know it sounds cliche, but it's really not. It's to protect you, because people do not care. You are looking out for your best interest. If I can give you any advice from a woman to young women, I'm still a young woman myself, but people who are younger than me, take the time to learn yourself and take the time to get to know your partner before you give too much away too soon, because you can't take it back. So I would really, really, really press that issue. And I think that's it. I think that's all I wanted to say for this relationship video. It's very long. I know, but it was a lot to go over. There's a lot of stuff I left out, but I think that's pretty much the gist of what I wanted to say. And comment down below what you think. Comment down below if you have any stories, relationships you can relate to, stories you can relate to. If you have your own story you want to put down, this is a no judgment zone. I don't want anybody to listen to this and be judging me, because at the end of the day, that's my past, and God gives us new mercies every day. I had to learn to forgive myself because the Lord forgives me. So nobody could judge me if he don't judge me, child. He's the only one who could judge me. So I'm not ashamed of my past. It's made me the woman I am today. I've grown so much from the person that I was in those relationships, and it's made me stronger. Each relationship made me stronger, and each relationship will make you stronger. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So now, just to leave it off, I do want to still do my prayer at the end of each video, and this one is going to be more of a relationship prayer. So Father God, thank you so much for allowing me to have this platform to be able to reach whoever you have called me to reach to. Particularly this time, Father God, help all the people watching to learn how to view themselves how you view us. Help us to love others the way the scripture that you've given us about love shows us how to love. Help us to love that way. Help us to not be clouded by external forces, and help us to think clearly whenever we get into relationships. Help us to think with wisdom, your wisdom. Help us to not lean on our own understanding, but help us to lean on your understanding when we get into relationships, whether that be friendships, etc. Help us to have the strength and the self-control to not give ourselves away too soon. And when you have picked the perfect partner for us, help us to be ready to receive that partner and to not get in the way. help to remove people out of our lives and relationships out of our lives that do not serve us. And help us to have the self-control also, that when you remove those people out of our lives, help us to have the self-control to keep them out, and not go back to them. All this I ask in your son Jesus' name, we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I will see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.